All right, so this is Circuits 1. I'm Dr. Hartman and all that kind of jazz. You are taking me for circuits for better or for worse. I will say I'm the only electrical engineering professor currently teaching circuits, so it's probably a reasonably good idea to be in this section. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. My office is Nethkin Hall 211, and I have office hours from Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon every day. In addition to those office hours, I am the faculty advisor for Eta Kappa Nu, which is the Electrical Engineering Honor Society. And that organization and myself will be offering circuits tutoring free to anyone who comes by Nethkin Hall, room 105, from 4:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays. So anybody that has any questions about any homework or anything like that, if you can't make it to my office hours, or you want to work on stuff in a little bit more of a group setting, by all means, come by our free tutoring sessions. Everyone is welcome. If you have friends in other sections, let them know to come by. If you have friends that are freshmen in the FYE and they're struggling with those baby circuits, let them know and I'll help them too. I got no problem helping anybody and everybody that wants to learn more about circuits. Let's see, my email address is my last name @latech.edu, so that's fairly straightforward. My office phone number is given there. If you call it, that is a terrible idea. Because I teach like 5 classes a quarter, so I'm rarely in my office outside of office hours. So just to give you a heads up. Our emergency class disruption policy, effectively, if everything goes to hell again, we'll resume over Moodle for whatever reason. COVID gets worse, there's an earthquake or something like that. Moodle and Zoom is how things are going to go down. The course objectives for this class is to take everything that you learned in your 120 series about circuits, knock that out in about 4 days, and then really get into some nitty-gritty material regarding the behavior and characteristics of electrical circuits. The textbook for this class is Engineering Circuit Analysis, 9th edition by Height, Kimmerly, and Durbin. I apologize if you have purchased this textbook. Not because it's a bad textbook, it absolutely is not. But I'm going to be recording all of the lectures, posting notes, and all that kind of good stuff online so that really you don't need a textbook for this class. If, however, you have not purchased that textbook, which again is a very good textbook, legitimately, I enjoy it. If you go to Google here, I don't know why I have 5 different things up, and you Google CADULLABY. It asks if you meant CAD lullaby. I absolutely didn't. This is a textbook by Fawaz T. Ulabi, who is a very distinguished professor of electrical engineering at the University of Michigan. I just got notification that he's retiring this year after 37 years of leading the program at one of the absolute best electrical engineering schools in the country. And he and a few of his fellow professors at various universities around the country wrote a textbook for circuit analysis that you can download for absolutely free. If you happen to want a hardback copy of it, you can order it for $75 from their website, but it is a wonderful resource that he and his colleagues are allowing any and every engineering student to have access to. So I try to promote it as much as possible because it's a fantastic resource and it's at absolutely no cost to you all. So screw our overpriced bookstore.
Is the 8th edition of the textbook fine?
The 8th edition, I'm not going to, the only thing that really changes between editions of textbooks like this are homework problems. And since I don't assign any homework problems out of the textbook, none of that remotely matters. So 8th edition is perfectly fine. I'm not in any way, shape, or form encouraging anybody to steal PDF versions of textbooks off of the internet, which is why I let you guys be aware that there is a free PDF version of a textbook that the author is openly distributing. But I have heard tell of the 8th edition of the Height, Kimberly, and Durbin textbook being available online, although I'm in no way, shape, or form encouraging you guys to go steal it. I've also heard tell that, let's see, oh gosh, this is a really good one I like. By the way, you guys are never allowed to look at my folder on my computer that says textbooks. There are several other circuits textbooks where if you were looking hard enough, you could find available on the internet, but I am, again, in no way, shape, or form encouraging you to steal other people's intellectual property. Any circuits textbook, roughly speaking, is going to cover all of the material that we do in this class, so it really doesn't matter which one you use, if any of them. All right, disability disclosure. Students needing testing or classroom accommodations based on a disability are encouraged to discuss those needs with the instructor as soon as possible. For more information about eligibility for accommodations, contact the Department of Testing and Disability Services, and I provide you with a phone number and a website for assistance. I don't want to get into anyone's personal business by any stretch of the imagination, but if you are eligible for testing accommodations for this class, I would actually highly encourage you go ahead and go submit all that paperwork and get that stuff in place. It will be of great benefit to you. You're eligible for it for a reason, so utilize that resource. That's all I'm going to say about that. If you're able to do it, I would highly encourage you to do so. I would not see how the first test goes and then apply for it. I'd go ahead and take care of it now. Class attendance. So this class adheres to the guidelines for class attendance found in Chapter 3 of the University Catalog, officially, all that kind of stuff. Unofficially, you are all adults. You are paying, either you, your parents, or some form of government is paying for you to be here. It's your time. You can do with it as you please. So I'm never going to hold your lackluster attendance or anything like that against you. So if you want to be here, fantastic. I'm happy to have you. If you don't want to be here and you feel that you can go through this class at your own pace using online resources and all that kind of stuff, more power to you. I will say that because we are in the COVID pandemic phase still, I am recording all of these lectures on Zoom. And so we've got one student, I believe, who's utilizing Zoom as a means by which to attend the class today. Ostensibly, the Zoom option is there for students who are quarantining due to illness, but legitimately anybody who wants to use that to attend class is free to do so at any point. You don't need my my permission or anything like that. It's there for a reason. I'll always be on Zoom and physically here, so you can attend the class in whatever modality best suits you and your comfort level. If you are not going to physically or virtually attend the class, I am going to record all of these and I upload them to my YouTube channel and put a link on the Moodle page. So that if you have to go to a conference or you're just like super don't want to put on pants, I would say you're not going to wake up, but it's 2:30 in the afternoon. If you're not up by 2:30, you had a heck of a night. But you know, if there's that opportunity as well. I will say that it takes me some time to edit and upload the videos and all that kind of good stuff. So like I kind of do a data dump and put the week's worth of videos up over the weekend when I have a little bit more time. Again, I'm stuck in class kind of all day, every day. So my wife is a very forgiving woman, but she much prefers that I eat dinner and watch a couple of TV shows with her before bed instead of sitting on my computer doing even more stuff for you guys. So I try to get all those videos uploaded over the weekends. All right. Academic misconduct, official policies and all that kind of stuff here. Cheating is bad. I really, really don't like it. If I catch you cheating, I will do every and anything I can do to ruin your career here at Louisiana Tech University, just to be very, very blunt about it. Hate cheaters, absolutely. With regards to behavior, no threats of verbal or physical violence against, me or your peers or anything like that. My general rule is if you're less of an arrogant jerk than I am while in this class, then you're doing pretty good. So. Homework policy here. There's going to be 24 homework assignments that will be posted on WebWork for this class. They will follow practically every lecture that I am going to give except for today's. So this isn't just a free syllabus day. I do have a little bit of stuff to talk about, but it's not enough to warrant a legitimate homework assignment. The way that the homework is going to work is if it's assigned to you on a Monday or it corresponds to Monday's lecture, it'll be due at midnight before the Friday class meeting. So you have, if it's assigned or if it has to do with lecture 1, it's due before lecture 3. If it's assigned to deal with lecture 10, it's due before lecture 12. I like that modality because it gives you guys a little bit more time to prioritize things. I know that the overwhelming majority of you are not electrical engineering students, and so you may feel that your statics or dynamics homework or whatever is a more important thing to deal with, and I'm perfectly okay with that mindset. I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of flexibility. Another reason that I like that modality is because that means that there is always at least one circuits tutoring session available before the homework is due so that you can come ask questions. Additionally, there is at least one lecture session for you to ask questions, at the end of or before and all that kind of stuff. So it gives you, in my opinion, the most amount of opportunity to ask questions about stuff that you might find difficult or confusing without just letting you guys have free reign to take 2 weeks to do a homework set and it's due after you've taken a test on it or something like that. So all right, in-class assignments. So in-class assignments are a little thing that I like to do because I understand that nobody wants to hear me talk for 2 hours straight. So typically speaking, I try to keep my lectures somewhere in the ballpark of 45 minutes to an hour, kind of at the high end. And then we use the rest of the class period to work some problems ostensibly together. So I would argue that since there's 6 people sitting at a table, you could go off in groups of 2s and 3s and try to work on some of these problems. The reason that I assign in-class assignment problems is because in my mind, it's a low pressure situation. There is a grade associated with it, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but it gives you an opportunity to ask questions of me while things are still reasonably fresh. So you're not trying to get finished with the homework assignment an hour before it's due or something like that, and you've had 4 days to forget everything. It's effectively immediately after the lecture. Oh, I thought I had this, but now I'm trying to put it in practice and something just isn't clicking. It gives you an opportunity to ask questions. These in-class assignments are graded for participation only. That means I do not care about their completeness and I do not care about their correctness whatsoever. My only interest is seeing you guys give them a legitimate attempt. And if it doesn't make sense, you ask a question, either among yourselves at your table, or you flag me down and ask me my thoughts on that. If everything made sense and you're able to knock out the in-class assignment within 15 minutes, you get to leave like 30 to 45 minutes early. And I'm perfectly okay with that. This is just an extra opportunity for you guys to work on homework adjacent problems. And in my mind, probably problems that are closer to what I put on tests. Dr. Schwanbaum, myself, and Dr. Cronk haven't really figured out what the test modality is going to be for this class, but historically it has been, I make all the tests while everybody else says, oh yeah, we'd love to help, and then never gets around to doing it. So the in-class assignments are the most like the test problems that I would put on the exam. And I'm going to be involved in the test making process for sure. So it's a good idea to, actually take a crack at them. All right, mini labs. So there's going to be 8 miniature lab sessions throughout the quarter. These labs are to be completed in groups of 2 to 3 students. Typically, they will be done at the end of a lecture. So there might be times where I lecture for 15 minutes, give you guys one problem, and then you spend the rest of the class period working on the miniature lab assignment, which is supplemental to whatever topic that we were covering that day. To complete these lab assignments will require the purchase of a kit from the project-based learning office. I don't remember what the number of it, but it's the one down the hall where Ashley Osborne and Dr. David Hall's office and all that kind of stuff is. I believe these kits cost a whopping $10, and if I am being entirely honest, really only one person per 2 to 3 person student group needs to actually purchase the kit. So you could all go in together for $3.50 to $5 a head and buy your little kit of resistors, capacitors, inductors, op amps, and all that jazz and be good for the quarter. Okay, so trying to make it as low cost to you as completely possible. The labs will generally require the use of 1 or more multimeters. I will try to let you know ahead of time when you need to bring multimeters and all that kind of good stuff to class. I do not remember off the top of my head if the kit comes with a breadboard or not, or if you're expected to tear the breadboard off of your 120 project.
People coming out of the lot had breadboards.
Wonderful, thank you. So sounds like you don't need to purchase another breadboard. So good, you don't have to destroy your masterpiece pill dispenser or whatever it is you designed at the end of 122. All right. Exams. There are 3 exams given during this class. All exams are closed book and closed notes. So I want to talk about that briefly. Typically speaking, exam 1 is full on closed notes. Exam 2 is full on closed notes. And then exam 3 really depends on how much Dr. Cronk whines about how his students need an equation sheet. So I am open to it, but generally speaking, if nobody asks, if none of the other professors' students push for them wanting an equation sheet enough, I don't do an equation sheet. So tell your friends in the other sections to bother their professors so that I'll get in line, I guess. I don't know what else to say. Let's see. The exams in this class are going to be joint exams across all 3 sections. Only FE approved peasant calculators that you guys got to use on your engineering 120 exams are okay. I would tell you if you cheaped out and bought the TI 30 instead of the 36, that was a terrible decision. We're going to be doing some complex math in this class, so math using both a combination of real and imaginary numbers. And the 36, while it is capable of doing that, or excuse me, while the 30 is capable of doing that math, the 36 is much, much, much better at doing it. And you can store variables and all that kind of stuff. So spend the extra $6 and get the better calculator. It will absolutely be worth it. Okay. If you don't do it, you have to do all that terrible math 60% by hand, which is doable, but legitimately a nightmare. So telling you now, buy the slightly upper limit calculator. Actually, talking about calculators here. Parts of this class are going to require you guys to solve systems of equations that will be, parts of this class will require you to solve systems of equations. I try to make all of my test questions that involve solving a system of equations contain no more than 3 unknown variables, okay? That isn't to say it might not look like there are 4 unknown variables, and I am essentially asking you to make some circuit simplification to get it down to a 3 equation, 3 unknown system. That being said, the Casio FX 991 calculator is capable of solving systems of equations containing 4 unknown quantities. So if you want to be a big baller on the calculator side of things, a Casio FX 991 is the most powerful FE approved calculator that is available to you to use in this class. So I'm just trying to make you aware of it. Ian, how much does it cost? Do you remember?
I got it for free, but I recently had my friend buy one and it was like $20.
20 bucks.
Yeah,
So,
if you don't even as the goal this year, they might have that as a reward.
so $20 to make your life slightly less terrible in this class. I would highly suggest it. All right. Grading grading scale and all that kind of jazz. All right, so homework counts for 15% of your grade in this class. The in-class assignments count for 5% of your grade. Again, those are the effectively my highfalutin participation grade is half a letter grade. The mini labs are 5%. That is also a different form of participation effectively. And then exam 1, exam 2, and exam 3 are all worth 30%. Now you may look at this and you may say, Dr. Hartman, you are just absolutely terrible at math. That adds up to way more than 100%. You are very correct. I am a sucker. And so I believe that, test anxiety and stuff like that is a real thing. And so what I do is your worst test grade, I only count for 15%. So you can ostensibly pretty heavily bomb one exam, just have a real crappy day and still make an A or a B in this class. I'm not going to say easily by any stretch of the imagination, but it is absolutely viable. Okay. So I'm trying to be mindful of things like that. Now, because I am such a magnanimous and benevolent human being and have policies like that, I don't curve. So your grade is what your grade is. If you get an 89.95, that's wonderful. It's higher than a lot of your peers. Okay. So, all right. Syllabus changes. The contents of this syllabus are not expected to change. However, if I need to change anything, I reserve the right to do so. And I will let you know about it. I don't think anything's going to have to change, but if I need to, again, I can do it. I just need to let you know. Then we have, let's see, emergency notification stuff. So if you haven't signed up for this already, you should do so. This is how you're told if in the event of a weather event or something like that, classes are canceled. Then we have our COVID-19 policy, which I need to actually spend a little time talking about. Students can access COVID-19 related information, guidelines, FAQs, and policies at Louisiana Tech's website, www.latech.edu/coronavirus. Then there's some information about the return to campus plan. And then the next sentence is, I believe to be vitally important. Masks are required to be worn indoors on campus. I believe the actual policy is masks which cover both the nose and the mouth are required to be worn indoors while on campus. I am not going to spend a lot of my effort policing this stuff. I can see that there are several people in this class right now who are not wearing their masks correctly. I don't understand why it is a political issue. I don't want to get into that by any shape or form. It is policy, and so we will comply with said policy. Full stop. Some of you may be aware that I got COVID last year and was hospitalized for a week and had to teach classes in this room with an oxygen tank and stuff like that sitting beside me for a month or so. And so it is my goal to never get that crap again. So even though as an instructor, and I am 6 feet or more away from all of you, I'm going to wear my mask at all times when I'm around any of you. No offense or anything like that. I just really don't want to go to the hospital again. Very unpleasant experience. So let's see. Down at the 4th paragraph, students who are feeling ill with COVID-19 symptoms, have been exposed to or have tested positive for COVID-19 should not come to class. And then there's a little bit after that. Legitimately, I would add to that, if you're feeling ill, just don't show up, because I'll be real mad if I get COVID again. But I'll be pretty pissed if you guys give me the flu too. Okay, to be totally honest. My first quarter here, I was teaching a engineering 120 class, and I had 4 students come up to me. Dr. Hartman, I have the flu. Do I need to be here? Absolutely not. Get the hell away from me. Spent my entire Christmas break sick as a dog. If you're sick, don't show up. If you're not sick and you don't want to be here, also don't show up. We have the Zoom and the recordings and all that kind of stuff for a reason. I don't need a doctor's note or any of that jazz. I really don't. I never look at them when you have them. Like I said, if you want to be here, fantastic. If you don't want to be here, that's okay too. So please don't get me sick. It'll put me in a real irate mood when I make your exam, trust me. Important stuff here. The direct link to the reporting protocol for students exposed to, displaying symptoms of, or testing positive for COVID-19 is located at www.latech.edu/return-to-campus-plan/for-students. Students must reach out to Stacy Gilbert, Dean of Student Services and Academic Support at stacyc@latech.edu for help with accommodations and additional information. Accommodations may not be granted until property university protocol has been followed. Short-term COVID-19 accommodations are not disability accommodations. So I want to explain to you guys why that is important. It is important for 2 reasons. The first of which is for our university to kind of keep tabs on how things are going health-wise on campus, okay? So we need to know how many students are ill, are having to quarantine, and all that kind of good stuff for logistical purposes, as well as both student and faculty well-being. The second reason that the protocols for reporting and all that kind of stuff are important is, let's say, for whatever reason, that you test positive or are exposed to someone who has COVID around an examination time, okay? If you follow the proper reporting protocols, I can easily say, yes, I can accommodate your request to take your exam at a different date. If you have not followed those protocols, I cannot grant that accommodation. So you have to show up, take the exam at that time, and potentially expose all of your peers to an illness, okay? So please, please, please follow the reporting guidelines, okay? It's really easy. All you have to do is just send an email to Ms. Stacy Gilbert, whose email address is provided there. You will be assigned a SRT member who will work with you on a plan for when you can return to campus and all that kind of good stuff. And every one of your professors will be happy that you went through the proper reporting procedures. All right, and then last thing here, information and contact numbers and sites for Louisiana Tech counseling services are located at that long web address that I don't want to read. So if you need someone to talk to about COVID related stuff or anything else, counseling services are provided for free to all Louisiana Tech students. By all means, utilize them if you feel they are appropriate for you. Any questions about any of this syllabus related gobbledygook? All right, the next thing we have here on the next page, if I can get to it, is a tentative course schedule. Where today we are scheduled to talk about the syllabus, which I have done at length at this point, and then some basic circuits terminology. I don't even technically consider this to be a lecture. There's no homework assigned for it. There's also no in-class assignment. So it's a Friday. We're going to get out a little bit early as soon as I shut my dirty mouth. Important stuff here. Exam 1 is tentatively on Monday, October the 4th. The exam 2 is tentatively on Monday, October the 2nd. And exam 3 is tentatively on Monday, November the 15th. I am going to do everything in my power to keep to that exam schedule because for whatever reason, some of you might be graduating seniors who waited far too long to take this class. And this schedule gets you to have all of the lectures and all of the exams without me having to rearrange literally anything else. And it gets all of you non-seniors out of here a day early. Okay, so you can focus on your other whatever for the remainder of our non-existent finals week. Okay, so I'm going to do everything I possibly can to maintain this schedule so that we can hit those exams on those particular dates. So I do not have a room or anything like that in mind for, well, I have several in mind for the exams, but I don't have anything officially scheduled. As soon as I work with Dr. Kronk and Dr. Swanbaum about that, I'll let you guys know where you're expected to, physically show up and take the exams and all that kind of stuff. But they are, as I said previously, common night exams. You have a tentative date that is almost a month ahead of time for every single one of them. So if you have a work schedule or this, that, or the other, or your family is planning some trip in the middle of the fall quarter, which is a terrible idea, but happens, that's a god-awful excuse to miss one of these tests because you were told about it in plenty of time. So the last day of class, it says there is a mini lab makeup day. So if for whatever reason you quarantine or don't show up on any of the days that we have a mini lab and you are not a graduating senior, that is the day that you come and make it up. So I don't want to have to reply to 14 emails saying, oh, I missed this thing because X, Y, or Z reason, can I make it up? Yes, on November the 17th. Stop bothering me about it. All right, anything else that you guys want to talk about or anything, or I guess listen to me talk about before we get into today's small lecture topic? All righty. Apologize for my terrifying amount of icons on my desktop. All right, so we have a little bit to talk about today. This lecture type thing, my pen will work, is called Basic Circuits Terminology. All right, so legitimately, everything that we talk about for the next 20 to 30 minutes should be a review of stuff that you covered in the Engineering 120 classes. It may not, or it may have been a long time since some of you have taken those Engineering 120 classes, and so you forgot about it. So this is trying to refresh you. So we're just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a generic circuit element. I'm going to call it L because I'm extraordinarily creative. Okay. So circuit element A here is what's called a two-terminal element. So we have a terminal up here and a terminal down here. A two-terminal element can represent a wide variety of physical electrical components, like a resistor, or a battery, or a capacitor, an inductor, a diode. All of those are examples of two-terminal devices. We are going to deal with some devices in this class that have more than two terminals, particularly the op-amp, the operational amplifier, which actually has 8 terminals, or the most common package for it has 8 terminals. We are only going to concern ourselves really with 5 of them, but that's still quite a lot. You guys in your 120 series used a 3-terminal device called a transistor, which is probably the most common circuit element in existence right now. I want to say 10 years ago, there were more transistors being created than there were grains of sand in Hawaii every year. So transistors are absolutely everywhere. The processor for my fancy pants little tablet here has something like 9 billion of them. So there are lots of them and they're incredibly small. We're getting to the point where transistor technology is 14 to 16 nanometer gates, which is like the spacing of 2 to 3 atoms side by side. It's ludicrous. Actually, that's not right. 20 to 30 atoms side by side, because it'd be angstroms the other way. Anywho, so the majority of circuit elements that we're going to work with in this class are 2-terminal devices. However, some commonly used elements like transistors and op amps have more. So an element's terminals are what allows us to make connections between circuit elements. So I can connect another generic circuit element, let's call it element B, again, because I'm extraordinarily creative. And so now we have what's called a network, okay? So a network is an interconnection between 2 or more circuit elements. All right. So when 2 or more circuit elements are connected together, they form a network. And the points of interconnection between the circuit elements are what are called nodes. So I'm going to erase all these little orange dots here. And we're going to talk about nodes. And again, fully aware this is a review for the overwhelming majority of you. So a node will be defined to be a point of interconnection between 2 or more circuit elements. So if we connect more circuit elements together, like so, we are essentially creating more nodes. Right? When we have multiple nodes present, it's often helpful to identify nodes. Okay? This is actually a critical part of what's called nodal analysis technique for solving circuits. Okay, so how I like to identify nodes is I identify them using different colors. So, for example, I could say that this point of interconnection is one node. And what I'm going to do right now, hopefully you guys saw in your Engineering 120 series, but maybe you didn't. Instead of just looking at that one individual point, I can actually say that this whole expanse right here, so everywhere between element B and A, is considered to be the same node, okay? We're going to explain exactly why we can make that assumption later, but for now, we'll just take it for granted that that is a thing that is available to us. And so we could call this also node number 1. And then let's use blue. I'll call this guy up top node number 2. And I'll fill that guy in like so. And then I'll use this green for node number 3 down here at the bottom. All right. So if we look at circuit elements A and B, we can see that there is exactly one point of interconnection between them with no branching paths. So these elements are what we consider to be connected in series. Our definition for a series connection is a connection between two circuit elements with no branching paths. And if we look at elements C and D, we can see that they share a connection at their top terminals, which is the blue node in this case. And they share a connection at their bottom terminals, which is the green node in this case. These two elements are considered to be connected in parallel. So a parallel connection is a connection between two or more elements where both sets of terminal pairs are shared. All right. It is critically important for you guys to understand this next little concept, okay? And I think this is one of the places where the Engineering 120 series might not do a particularly good job at addressing what I call baby circuits. Not all connections have to be series or parallel. It is perfectly reasonable that a connection between circuit elements doesn't fall into one of those two categories, okay? And that's something that legitimately a lot of students seem to have trouble understanding at the beginning, because you spend so much time identifying which elements are in series versus which elements are in parallel. Absolutely okay, but sometimes the answer is neither, right? So for instance, if we look at elements B and C up there on the board, right? Elements B and C share that blue node, node 2, right? But they don't share the red node and they don't share the green node. So they can't be connected in parallel. Now they share a point of interconnection right underneath where I've written the number 2 and circled it, but there is a branching path directed to the right towards node D, or excuse me, towards element D. So because there is that point of interconnection, but there is also a branching path, they can't be in series either. And again, that's perfectly reasonable, okay? So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that, because that's a hiccup that a reasonable amount of students have, all right? So before we move along to a little bit of an example problem where I'm expecting some feedback from you guys, does anybody have any questions about any of this stuff? Cheston.
Would it be in parallel as well with, like, is it in parallel also because D goes down from B down to D and wraps back up, you go through C back to B?
I'm not entirely sure that I understand your question. So you're asking,
You go straight from right and then down where the 2 is to C, and then that would be series, that was the only wire. And you can also go all the way to the right and then down, you know, and then go up through C.
So like go right from B to D and then go up to C.
Yeah, and then back to bottom.
Pointing out that there's
so yeah, so we're going to get into loops and meshes and all that kind of stuff in a moment. So when I'm looking at series and parallel connections, legitimately, I'm looking for if there's an additional path that current, which we technically haven't talked about, can take, they're not in series, right? So for two elements to be in series, kind of jumping the gun here, they have to be carrying the exact same amount of current. So if there is a branching path to where some current might break off, they ain't in series. with regards to parallel, that's kind of the big reason why I put things in different colors, is so that I can see easily what's shared between the two different elements, right? So C and D are in parallel because they share that blue node at that top set of terminals, and they share that green node at that bottom set of terminals. And it does not break the parallelness of those two, that A also happens to be connected to that green node, right? So as long as both sets of terminals are shared, it doesn't matter what else is connected. Those two guys are for sure in parallel. Did that help at all?
I thought it would have to loop back to like make a closed loop to be considered, but if it just ended.
So even if,
Like if it just went to ground instead of looping back to C.
so if C, the bottom terminal of C were connected to ground and the bottom terminal of D were connected to ground, they'd still be in parallel. And we'll talk a little bit about exactly why that is when we get to nodal analysis and really introduce the concept of ground. But we can actually kind of explain it with the concept of voltage, which we're going to talk about on Monday as well. And equipotential, I hate to say equipotential surfaces in circuits because that sounds very, very high level physicsy, but it actually isn't. Effectively, everything that's the same color has the exact same electrical potential is really all that you guys need to know. But they are equipotential surfaces with regards to electric potential energy. And that's also what's telling us what's in, that's another way to define what's in parallel as well, as if they have the same voltage drop over them, which means they have the same difference in electrical potentials. They're in parallel. So. But that's a little bit more advanced than I want to really get into for today. Elijah, what's up?
Not really an important question. Just wondering, are there like elements that would change, like depending on what component it is, there would change whether or not it would be in parallel?
No. Well, so I say any two terminal element, the answer is no. When you have more than two terminals, the concept of series and parallel can get pretty wonky pretty quickly. Okay. So for a two terminal element, which is where we're going to spend the overwhelming majority of our time, the answer is unequivocally no. The element does not matter in any way, shape, or form with regards to a series or parallel connection. So you can have voltage sources in series or parallel with resistors, capacitors, inductors, all that kind of good stuff. You can have voltage sources in parallel with each other. That's what I do outside of here. Working for Sabre Industries, developing battery energy storage systems. In order to get very large amounts of current out of these DC batteries, we connect a whole bunch of them in parallel so that the voltage is fixed. They all have the exact same voltage, but the amount of current that can be supplied by them effectively stacks or adds together by connecting them in parallel. So from a component level, as long as it's again, as long as it's a two terminal component, everything is gravy. Fantastic questions. Anything else? All right, so let me pop over to a new page here. I made 4 different example problems. We're only going to do one of them. Don't worry. I'm not going to waste that much of your time. So let's consider the following network. So if I'm counting correctly, this circuit, and I actually might have forgotten to, yep, I absolutely did forget to give you guys the definition for a circuit technically, but that'll be okay. A circuit is really anything that has a closed path, any network that contains a closed path. So if there is a closed loop, we have a circuit. Can't believe I forgot that on my notes. Seems kind of ludicrous since this is circuits. Oh well. So this circuit contains 8 elements. So I have 3 questions for you guys. Question number 1. How many nodes does this circuit contain? Anybody care to venture? I don't want to say a guess, but you know what I mean. 5. Okay, absolutely correct. And just for the sake of argument, I'm going to go ahead and identify all 5 of them. And we will reference them by color from here on out. All right. So there are 5 nodes. I've identified all of them for any of you who were not aware that there were 5. Okay. My second question is which elements are connected in series? So A and B there is a single point of interconnection between elements A and B with no branching paths, right? So to be clear what I mean by a branching path, because this might cause a little bit of confusion, there's nothing else jutting out and looping back around somewhere for current to possibly divert, right? So electrical charge only has one route it can take to get from element A to element B. There's nowhere else it could possibly go. That's what we mean for it to be in series, right? And by the same explanation, elements A and C are also in series. So we're just looking at that hot pink path, right? So they are in series because a path exists between those 2 elements where there's no other way for anything to go. So I'm not saying another path doesn't exist by which we could go back around. Technically, we could go all the way from C to the right, through H, then to the left, through E, then through B, and then back down to A. But we're just looking at those 2 elements and how they're connected to each other, not how they're connected to everything else, if that makes sense, right? So there's always, we could always say there's going to be some convoluted loop-like path, blah, blah, blah. But we're looking we're Occam's razoring it, the simplest possible connection between the two of them, if that makes sense, okay? Any other questions about which elements are connected in series? So we could ostensibly say that elements C, A, and B are all connected in series to each other because there's no branching as well, right? So it kind of breaks the rule because really series connection means that there are two elements, but we can think of these guys as being in series, and it'll be a little bit more obvious when we are looking at actual currents and stuff like that. When they all carry an identical current, that is another way for us to say that elements are connected in series, but because we haven't gotten into voltage, current, power, and energy quite yet in this class, that's why I would say that right now, A and B are in series, A and C are in series, and kind of leave it alone. But we're going to adapt that definition as we learn a little bit more, okay? Let's see, question number 3. Which of the elements are connected in parallel? That is not remotely how you spell elements. So I hear F, G, and H being said by multiple people. I thought I heard something about B, E, F, G, and H. So let's talk about F, G, and H first. First of all, I agree. Let's start there. F, G, and H. So we can see that the top terminal of elements F, G, and H are all tied together at that blue node, right? And the bottom terminal of elements F, G, and H are all tied together at that brown or maroonish node, okay? Now, let's talk about element E, okay? Because that was suggested to be in parallel with F, G, and H. So E isn't in parallel because one of its terminals is connected to the green node, and green isn't maroon, right? So that's how we check that kind of thing, okay? For the same reason, D isn't in parallel with F, G, and H either, because it's tied to that green node at its topmost terminal, right? So they have to share, they have to share both sets of terminals in order to be connected in parallel. All right. When we learn more about combination techniques, we can then start to get a little bit fancy and say, well, you can't even really do it with this one, or at least not easily. You could say that the combination of element B, A, and C is in parallel with element D or something like that. But with a generic circuit element where we don't know what they are, so that there's no way to justify combining them, it's hard to make that argument. So when we get to dealing with resistors, capacitors, inductors, current and voltage sources, and all that kind of stuff, again, we will expand our definitions of parallel and series to accommodate our level of circuits knowledge. But for now, when we're dealing entirely with generic circuit elements where we don't have any clue what they really represent, we have to stick to the fundamentals. All right, any other questions regarding this stuff? So, nodes, series and parallel connections. Anything else? All right, so I'm gonna circle back around to our original diagram here. Oh, I didn't forget to define circuits. I just didn't do it yet. There we go. I'm going to erase these nodes because we're going to talk about something else and I want to unbusy this. All right. So when a network contains at least one closed path, the network may be considered a circuit. So our fundamental definition for a circuit is any network that contains at least one closed path. When we have a closed path in circuits, we call that a loop. So a loop is defined to be any closed combination of circuit elements. So let's look back at our simple 4-element circuit here. We can call it a circuit now because we see that they're closed paths. In this configuration, there are 4, excuse me, that's not right, 3 loops. I apologize. So how I like to draw my loops is, or really, I consider loops to be starting and ending at the same point. And again, we could get into convoluted things like figure eights and all that kind of stuff. That's really defeating the purpose. We're looking for simple connections and pathways here, right? So if I started at the bottom left-hand corner and at the bottom terminal of element A, and then went up through element B and then down through element C and came back to the left, I would consider that to be one loop. Similarly, if I start at the bottom left-hand corner of element C, go up and then to the right through element D, and then back, I have a second loop. Now, if I start at the bottom left-hand corner of A, go through B, and then keep on going, go down through D, and then come back around to finish where I started at. That is my third loop, okay? So a loop is any closed combination of circuit elements and nodes. So let me put and nodes here. It looks like I forgot to do that. All right, I apologize. So there's one more little definition that we're going to talk about here, and that is what's called a mesh. And us being able to correctly identify meshes is going to be an integral part of what's called mesh analysis, which is the counterpart of nodal analysis we talked about when identifying nodes. All right, so our last definition for the day. A mesh is any loop in a circuit which does not contain a smaller loop. So let me scroll back down so you guys can finish writing the definition. Sorry for being a jerk and moving too quickly, and then we'll scroll back up and look at that circuit again briefly. So of the three loops that I have depicted here, loops 1 and 2 are meshes, but loop 3 is not because it contains loops 1 and 2, right? So any loop that doesn't contain a smaller loop is a mesh. So the easiest way for us to identify meshes in these types of circuits is really going to be to kind of look for what I call window panes, right? They're going to be the simplest closed pathways give us meshes. And the more complex closed pathways, returning back to the same point, are what are going to give us our various loops. Does that make sense? All right, so one last example problem. I'm going to take this same circuit. And I'm going to ask two questions now. Number one, how many meshes does this circuit contain? Let's start there. 4. Anybody disagree with 4? Let's start there. All right. So identifying meshes, arguably easier than identifying nodes. Not a whole heck of a lot of ambiguity to it, right? So we have mesh 1, mesh 2, mesh 3, and mesh 4. Question number 2, literally our last topic for the day. How many loops? I like that there is a lot of discussion. You say 3, I question you. There's got to be at least as many loops as there are meshes, since meshes are loops. So if you believe that there are less loops than there are meshes, we have a little bit of a disconnect in communication here. All right, so I've heard everything from 3, which I hope was in jest, through 11. 401. Okay, that's ludicrous. The correct answer is 10. Okay, so let's talk about how there are 10, because this is probably not obvious to many of you. But being able to correctly identify loops is going to help us apply various circuit analysis tools. Okay, so that's why I want to take the time to do. So there are 4 single mesh loops, right? Obviously mesh 1, mesh 2, mesh 3, and mesh 4. I'm not going to bother writing those down. How many 2 mesh loops could we have here? 3, right? So 1 combining mesh 1 and 2. Another one combining mesh 2 and 3. And then finally, 1 combining mesh 3 and 4. So there are 3 2 mesh loops. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. How many 3 mesh loops are there? 2. So our first one has meshes 1, 2, and 3. And our second one has meshes 2, 3, and 4. And then how many 4 mesh loops do we have? 1 around the outside, right? So mesh 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the one around the outside. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6, plus 4 individual meshes make 10 loops. All right, that's all that I have for you guys today. So we are wrapped up half an hour early. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. If you have any questions or anything for me, I'm going to stick around for a little bit because I have to prepare the assignment sheet for the lab that you guys are going to do on Monday that will require 2 multimeters. I would highly suggest that somebody from each, at least 1 or 2 people from each table, pop down the hallway and buy a kit from the project-based learning office so that you can complete the lab on Tuesday.